It is Thursday, August 18th here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to another installment of our Team Insider series. I'm your host, Matt Schauf. With me, as always, is Jared Smola, and joining us today is a guest from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, ready to provide some insight into the Pittsburgh Steelers, is Brian Batko. Brian, thanks very much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Matt. Thanks for having me, Jared. How we doing, guys?
Doing great, but we want to know how Najee Harris is doing first, because honestly, I kind of forgot that he suffered the left foot injury back at the beginning of August. And then I saw on Twitter that you were mentioning Wednesday, I think it was, that he's been dealing with that foot throughout most of camp. So is this something that we should be concerned about, especially considering that Najee Harris is a first-round pick in most fantasy drafts?
No, I don't think so. I think it's minor, and it was one of those deals where maybe the Steelers saw their offensive life flash before their eyes when he got stepped on early in camp and said, whoa, hold on. We're not rushing him back under any circumstances. We need him out there week one and for the duration of this season. So it was probably a situation where he's just shut down a little bit. Clearly not going to play him in that first preseason game last weekend. And from the sounds of it, he's not going to go this weekend as well. He said he hopes to maybe get some reps in week 3 of the preseason, but to be honest, guys, he really doesn't need it. He can hit the ground running as soon as they get to Cincinnati September 11th. And I think it's just a matter of precaution. Would not allow that injury to affect me in any way when it comes to determining his draft stock.
Has he been practicing on a regular basis?
He's been full since Monday. They were in pads those first couple of days, but he's not live in practice. He's basically being treated like a quarterback here in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin and company do not want him taking any more hits. Don't step on him. Don't try to lay the wood on 22 to declare that you're here as an undrafted free agent. None of that. Wrap this guy in bubble and get him to the preseason or the regular season healthy. So yes, he's practicing, but not. You might as well have a red jersey on.
Is Anthony Mcfarlane the one that they tell him to go ahead and hit?
He's in there. Really, any backup behind Najee Harris has to prove at this point that he can either take a hit or elude one, because they need to find a reliable number 2 behind him. Benny Snell is the guy who's kind of inherited that role, but there's certainly been competition, and Snell has dealt with a knee injury of his own that kept him out of that first preseason game. So Anthony Mcfarlane, you give him credit. He took his shot and he ran with it. I think it was 56 yards on just 7 carries against the Seahawks. But the one of the stars, the darlings of camp, has been this undrafted bowling ball out of Oklahoma State, Jaylen Warren. I don't know that I'm quite ready to say he's going to be the handcuff to Najee Harris, but he's doing a good job with the reps he's been given. And he also scored a touchdown for Kenny Pickett the other night, and that certainly can't hurt when you're helping out the first-round pick.
Yeah. Is it at least to the point with that backup situation where we can say, I don't know who would be the backup? Because that's important too for our fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I would say so. It's a mishmash of guys who bring different skill sets, but no one has separated himself. That's for sure. Benny Snell, I really liked coming out of college a few years ago, and he's had his opportunities in game with the Steelers. He's got a 100-yard game under his belt, and he was kind of the caddy for James Conner here for a couple seasons. But at this point, he's in the last year of his rookie deal. He needs to cement himself as that number 2, or he's going to have to feel worried about his future here going forward. McFarlane's got speed, and this young guy, Jaylen Warren, like I said, he's very low to the ground, kind of shifty, hits the hole hard, and runs with a little bit of power. But he also fumbled in that first preseason game, and coaches don't like when running backs fumble.
Getting back to Harris before we move to the passing game, should we expect either his carry share or his target share, maybe even both, to come down a little bit from the heights of last season?
Logically, no, because this offense still needs him, and he's still the best player on it, I think. But I just don't know how you can predict a guy to lead the league in touches 2 years in a row. I mean, if it's him or the field, you kind of have to go with the field because things happen, injuries, and maybe somebody else does step up to grab the bull by the horns when it comes to that backup running back duty. And I also think, just when you think about game script or game flow with this Steelers offense, I don't think there's going to be quite as many dump-offs to him as Ben Roethlisberger leaned on last season in his final year. I think they're going to try to push the ball downfield a little bit more with Mitch Trubisky, or if Kenny Pickett ends up, in that role at some point this season, he'll do the same. So I think that alone could lead to fewer I guess ad lib touches for Najee Harris, if that makes sense.
What have you seen as far as his passing game usage in camp? In this Matt Canada offense, and that's another question, I guess. Is the offense going to look different without Ben Roethlisberger around? So I guess that ties into this. But are they featuring Najee in the passing game as far as screens? Working him downfield a lot. Is he getting split out wide at all? How big of a part of the designed passing game do you think he's going to be?
I think it's going to be similar to last year. I don't think that's going to change much, but like I said, I don't think they're going to use him as the safety valve as often, because I think they are going to try to take more shots downfield to Diontae Johnson or Chase Claypool or George Pickens. So yes, I think he'll still be featured. I think he's still a really good pass catching running back, and I think they still want to use that asset of his game. But they can't be throwing quite as many short screens and asking him to go get the first down marker from 7-8 yards away. So it remains to be seen exactly how much this offense is going to change. Matt Canada told me on Monday that at least in the first preseason game, they didn't run a single play that they didn't run last year in the regular season. However, I would say with Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett or even Mason Rudolph running those plays, it just looks a lot different, the options that they have and the options that they choose to use, than when it was Ben Roethlisberger doing it.
So George Pickens, the star of Steelers camp, probably the single buzziest player in the entire NFL over the last month.
You guys would know better than me.
Yeah. Well, you've seen it, so that's cool.
I just mean in terms of where he is right now. I know every camp has a guy who, he's lighting up the veterans and everybody's talking about him. But yeah, I mean, it does sure seem like Pickens is right up there with any rookie receiver in the league for the buzz he's getting.
For sure, yeah. So I think our question from a fantasy standpoint is, is there room for him to sort of deliver production-wise on that hype when you have Deontay Johnson just got the contract extension, saw a boatload of targets the past couple of years. Chase Claypool has obviously flashed potential over the past couple seasons, and I think there are quarterback questions in Pittsburgh. So, is there room for Pickens to deliver on this hype so far?
I think you'd have to have a Cooper Kupp Triple Crown season to match the hype right now that is preceding him. So in that sense, to answer your question, no, but there's room for him to contribute and produce for sure. I mean, Deontay Johnson got that contract extension. I was a little surprised that the Steelers did that just because of the other options they have in the room and how promising it's been so far for Pickens. But Chase Claypool didn't exactly light it up in year two. He kind of leveled off. In terms of a scoring department, he regressed majorly from year one to year two. So I think that the jury's still out on him a little bit. And like Najee, he's been banged up for most of camp. He said he does want to get some reps with Mitch Trubisky and all the quarterbacks before he goes into the regular season. So, hopefully you'll be able to see him this week and or next to get a feel for his playmaking ability and what he can do this year. But either way, I think they're going to have to go to Pickens. He's too talented to keep him off the field. He's too talented to not look his way when they're on the field. I don't know that the production is going to match this hype, but I think he's going to have a nice rookie season, and I do think he'll be up there with some of the top rookies right now at his position. I wouldn't bat an eye at somebody drafting him on the upside potential alone.
You mentioned that Chase Claypool's missed a bunch of camp time with the shoulder injuries. So this might be tough to answer, but how do you see his role changing in the offense this year? I guess especially with the change in quarterback.
Well, I do think they're going to use him inside more, Jared. I think they're going to kind of use him as that Juju Smith-Schuster role, but with a higher ceiling, because Juju was essentially a short yardage weapon by the end of his time here, and his last season was marred by the shoulder injury that kept him out from week 5 until the playoff game, I think it was. So, it's a position that the Steelers need to fill for sure. They were running Ray McCloud out there in the slot a year ago. They've been reticent to use Claypool there because of his size, weight, speed combo on the outside, but he did that in college at Notre Dame. He likes that. Mike Tomlin has talked a lot about how you need all different shapes and sizes when it comes to slot receivers in today's NFL. So I think you'll see Pickens and Diontae Johnson on the outside a lot, with Chase Claypool trying to create mismatches with people on the slot.
And how about this quarterback situation? I think most of what we've read coming out of Pittsburgh has been negative on these three guys. I thought they all played pretty well in the preseason opener, though. So what are your expectations for the group? Who do you expect to be under center week 1? And then do you expect that we'll see Kenny Pickett at some point this season?
Definitely expect Mitch Trubisky to be there week 1. And I do think that Kenny Pickett is going to be heard from before the end of the regular season. I was lukewarm on the Trubisky edition, and I think I think he's had a lukewarm camp performance as well. The preseason game, he looked the part. He did what he had to do to move the offense, but that they weren't totally sold on him just by the fact that they did take Kenny Pickett in the first round. So I don't know if there's a succession plan in place or if they're just going to kind of ride Mitch until he struggles. But I think it's still the great unknown with this offense, right? I mean, coaches and teammates can say all the nice things they want about these guys, and they can throw all the darts they want in exhibitions. That's not the same as doing it in the regular season. And with Trubisky, he's going to have some rust to knock off from that perspective. Didn't play much last year in Buffalo. Mason Rudolph, I think that ship has kind of sailed on him to be the guy here in Pittsburgh. And Kenny Pickett has no NFL experience to speak of, and it's going to be a transition for him no matter when he gets in there. So I think this offense could certainly struggle out of the gates, no doubt about it. But they just hope they can do enough and that they'll have a dominant defense for that to be their winning formula.
And with the questions sorry, man, one more quick one. With the questions at quarterback, and I know the Steelers were like top 5 in pass rate last season. I think we're expecting them to shift pretty significantly to their run this season. Would you agree?
Yeah, as much as you can do that in today's NFL, I think, you also have to think about keeping Najee Harris fresh, and you don't want to run the wheels off of him, especially too early in the season. But I do think it's going to flow through him. I think that's what they want their identity to be. A lot of that's going to depend on, can the offensive line get that done? They struggled in a big way last year. They've added a couple new pieces, but no huge names. So they need the whole to be greater than the sum of its parts there up front. And they had some issues in pass protection Saturday night, but they were pretty good opening some holes for Anthony Mcfarlane and company in the running game. So if Najee Harris can get that same kind of wiggle room and that same kind of open field in front of them, then I think, that's absolutely a way that this team can win.
You mentioned the defense, and it's pretty straightforward in Pittsburgh in terms of who's going to be starting where, but there are a couple of question spots for those of us who like to play a complete fantasy league and include IDP.
Oh, man, the real sickos.
That's right. As sick as you want to get. So who's going to get the full-time snaps among the non-edge linebackers for these Steelers? Is it going to be Myles Jack leading that group this year?
I think so. Devin Bush has been a disappointment. They drafted him to be that sideline to sideline 100-some tackles every year type of guy, never leave the field. It just hasn't panned out. He had an injury last year. He struggled to bounce back from that torn ACL, but I think Myles Jack's going to have a really nice year. He looks rejuvenated. There was some talk that maybe he'd lost a step after year 6 in Jacksonville, but he was a young rookie. He hasn't even turned 27 yet. There's a lot of tread on the tires, don't get me wrong, but I think he's spoken about this being a fresh start for him to get out of the Jaguars situation. And I do think that they're going to throw him right into the fire here, and he's looked spry. He's looked athletic to me. I don't think he's going to be leaving the field much, if at all, for the Steelers at inside linebacker.
Do they have Minkah Fitzpatrick calling the plays in the huddle when he's in there? I know he was off the field for a while, but they don't tend to have the green dot on the linebacker, right?
They do tend to have it on a linebacker. We actually just talked to Minkah yesterday, and it was kind of a logical question. Are you going to get that green dot since you're 2-time All-Pro? Everybody raves about what you see from the back end, but he said no. He said it's generally Steelers tradition to give that to an inside backer, and I think that's going to be Jack. I'd be surprised if it isn't. I think that'll be another reason why he's going to be a guy playing 100% of the snaps or close to it.
Nice. Well, we like to hear that from a production standpoint. And then my other question is the cornerbacks. It looks like Levi Wallace, Cameron Sutton are probably going to be the top 2. Who is going to be the third? Or, am I wrong about one of those top 2?
You're so wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I do think, though, that Levi Wallace might actually be kind of that de facto 3, because I think they like Ahkello Witherspoon a lot. He came late last offseason, right before the regular season started, actually. So he was slow to get up to speed in this defense, but he ended up leading the team with 3 interceptions, really long, rangy guy on the outside. They're going to be in their nickel defense the majority of the time to match up with 3 wide offenses. So I think you'll see Wallace and Witherspoon on the outside, and Cam Sutton will be the versatile slot defender, and will help them out a lot in pass coverage. So they're kind of like the O-line with the Steelers. No huge names. You need them to gel and be a group that is better than what you think when you just look at the personnel.
Of course, for fantasy purposes, all we need them to do is stay on the field and collect tackles. We don't need them to be good. So
well, picking off a pass helps too, right?
That's right. We'll definitely take those. Well, we couldn't have asked for more from you, who covers the Steelers for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You can check Brian out at postgazette.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Brian Batko. Brian, thanks again for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks, boys.
You can find every episode of the Team Insider series and the rest of our podcast episodes on draftsharks.com, on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you like to get your podcasts. Please subscribe, give us a follow, give us a like. You can get notified whenever a new episode drops. The NFL season is fast approaching, but we have lots more content coming on the pod channels. And of course, there's loads of content and the draft tools available now on draftsharks.com. So become a DS insider there. Jared, if people do that, they will find the perfect draft series, which just hit the website this week.
They're done. Always feels good to get those done. They're awesome, though. I mean, round by round, detailed game plans, depending on PPR and non-PPR and where you're picking in the draft, which obviously matters a lot. So definitely check those out before you head out to your draft.
Yeah, they are so useful because they are so tedious to put together, but we suffer through them every year just to try to help you win your drafts. So they are there. Check them out along with all the other Draft Sharks content. For our guest, Brian Batko, for Jared Small and the entire Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Schaff saying thanks so much for swimming with us.